You know what I think is interesting is that when we hear about success stories, I mean, ARK, I'm going to give a little teaser. ARK has sold close to 10 million copies.
That's right, yeah.
Holy shit, okay?
That's what I was saying.
Okay, 10 million copies, right? I mean, let me just throw myself under the bus and say Jesse has generated more revenue with this title than my entire career, probably with an extra zero missing, off the end of my sales. So, I'm like in awe that a game that you've made could do that many units and is still selling. It's not like it just disappeared off it just went to 10 million and stopped. It's going to go for quite a while. A lot more people out there who are going to discover this game. And so that's pretty amazing. But what I wanted to really highlight is that you didn't roll out you didn't leave your parents' house, get together with buddies and just make this game, right? You put in the time. You worked at all the companies. You were inside of a company, the big corporate environment. You knew what worked. You knew it didn't work. Yeah. You were the really you had to go, school of hard knocks to go through all that stuff. So when the day came, you really had the skill set ready to go. Because we often just hear about the successes. We don't hear about the failures.
That's true.
So that's a really important part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things I learned was what I'm good at and how my skill set can be complemented by other people. And so when you go to start something new, I think it's really important to make sure you've got good business partners or people that are going to partner with you to do the things that take away from your time and the stuff that you would do to make the product or the experience more excellent or that much better. In our example, one of my business partners strictly comes from biz dev, marketing, worked on all sorts of stuff, even marketing for bands, worked on stuff like Guitar Hero and Rock Band, Doug Kennedy, and he handles the business stuff. Like, he is doing the day-to-day, dealing with stuff like payroll, or business-to-business relationship management with, platform holders, whether it's Valve, Sony, Microsoft. And that frees us up to actually develop the game, which is really important. I had a conversation a couple weeks ago with a friend of mine who is doing a new startup. And it's his first time, so he's kind of doing everything, getting the business registration, doing the tax stuff, doing all this stuff. And it's exciting for him because he hasn't had to do it before and he's learning a lot of those skills. But one of the things I told him, because I had done that before, is like, hey, once you kind of feel your way through all this stuff, make sure one of your partners that wants to do this and is good at it takes it over so you can focus on your product, because you're going to get the life sucked out of you trying to maintain the business side of things when your key role is to, make this game amazing for the consumers, not run this day-to-day like...
It sounds like the kind of advice your parents give you when you're a kid, and everything your parents say is really smart, makes sense, but you don't do it.
Well, that's true.
You know what I mean? You're just like, yeah, I get it, but I really want to go up the steepest part of the mountain. Right. And that's what happens with folks. And I did the same thing when I founded GPG, and then I wasn't coding anymore, and I didn't have the time. And anyways, great point to make. You really focused on what your core competency was. It sounds cliche, but it's true. It works, and it led to a tremendous success. So the original vision of the game, let's talk about that. When you guys sat around, whatever it was you were doing, to where the game is today. Can you take us on a bit of a journey from the start of that vision to where it is now, and perhaps even where it's going next?
Sure. So we had a really clear. Actually, if you look at our Steam page today, the content on the Steam page is what our vision for the game was. That's what we put out there at launch. So we had a clear idea of where we wanted to go with the game. But what happened was it changed dramatically when we entered this early access type of development. And we got a lot of great ideas from the community. Our thoughts on the game changed as people started playing it. And we really, on a monthly basis, as we created new patches and created new content, we implemented a lot of the ideas that were good and aligned with our original vision for the game. But I'd be lying if I said that we had everything planned out to where it is today, now that we're about to release on disc and Walmart and Best Buy and GameStop and all the retailers worldwide. The game is dramatically different now than what we had envisioned, mostly additively. We've added so much more content and feature stuff into the game than we initially had planned. But also, I think the tone of the game has changed a lot. What we originally thought was going to be a somewhat serious survival game with some comedy, you know, like obviously you can poop in the game at any moment, so we thought that would be kind of funny. The community's kind of taken off with it. There's so much role playing in the game. There's so many private servers where people are playing the game in different ways, and a lot of it we never anticipated. And I think it's for the better, but it's kind of one of those things where I've talked to some creators where, you know, they would never do early access. Because for them, there's like a strict vision that they hold that they want to see, and kind of letting it out and getting the community involved is maybe a little scary to them. But I think for us, that was one of the things that made the game so successful, is that we did listen to the community. We took the ideas that we thought were good. We asked their opinions on things like balance, if a feature was working or not. And we've always maintained a constant dialogue with the community, which if you're going to do, you need to start it early. Have people dedicated to it again. We have community managers that have been on the project since the very beginning, and just maintain it throughout the full life cycle of the product. And the community will respond with that two-way dialogue. And it's something that's just requires dedication. Like, it's not that hard to, you know, start it, but you have to keep it going. You know, you have to keep giving the communication that people want and receiving, and it's just like a constant cycle. So,
well, we all know how crazy we get when we send someone a text and they don't reply.
Yeah.
And the community is like that, right? If they're talking to you and they get silence back,
right,
they just go completely nuts, right? And then they go from your fans to trolls, right? And they're like, they're not listening. So clearly, just being able to interact with them regularly and giving them they really know you care and you're listening. So you answered my next question, which was you really did listen to the feedback. I think we were talking earlier. You said you have to know how to filter that feedback.
It's
and
true.
You just don't they're not designing the game,
right?
Just because they're giving you feedback, you know.
True. And there's been some unpopular decisions where some of the community wants one thing, and we just think, hey, that's not really a good idea. You know, some people will say that means we're not listening to them, but I think one thing that people sometimes forget on Reddit and other internet community sites is that the people that are actually communicating and interacting with the development team is actually the vast minority of players. Mm-hmm. And so we really have to consider not just the very loud several thousand people or the 2,000 people that review bomb us on Steam, which sounds like a lot, or 10,000 even, which will drive our review score on Steam. They have the 30-day review score now, has often gotten cut in half because we've done something that a vocal group of the player base doesn't like. But then it rises up after those 30 days pass. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Initially, it was very scary to us, but inevitably, we see that those reviews come in. People sometimes have valid concerns, so we listen to them. But as people start to play the game and you know, that sort of initial shock of an unpopular decision sort of wears off, you kind of see the reviews kind of start leveling out, and then we're back to mostly positive reviews again. You know, you kind of reminded me of something that's kind of tangential, but I don't hear the talk about Metacritic as much as I did 10 and 15 years ago, where it was literally contracts were being given to developers that if they didn't achieve a Metacritic, they wouldn't be paid their bonuses. And Metacritic has just kind of vanished and become this thing now. But like when I'm on Apple TV and I'm looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score for something, I take it with a grain of salt. I don't trust review scores anymore. Well, I go by my friends. I go by the word of mouth, the community, the people that I trust. Well, it's true. And actually, there's been some research lately where people don't necessarily play the best rated stuff or listen to or watch. They play, listen to, or watch whatever's popular. And that may not be highly rated. I mean, a great example is that Emoji Movie that just came out. Like, the critics, panned it. And then it's boom, second highest movie. Everybody's seeing it. They're talking about it. Critics be damned. People want to see the movie because everybody else is seeing it, and it's like a snowball effect. And that's one of the reasons we don't get so concerned about Steam reviews, because we know we still have a high number of people playing the game. I mean, I think our average daily CCU on PC is something around 45 or 50,000, which is pretty constant for the game the past few years. And so I think that it's just one of those things, right? As you mentioned, the rating of a game is important, but it's not the thing that dictates whether people are going to buy, enjoy, or play the game. It's really that popularity is what does it. Right. Now,
time is just flying past
No,
us
it's
here.
almost done.
I know. I mean, geez,
Could hang around for another hour, get some drinks.
But I wanted to ask you this question, and I'm sure you want to know. What were some of those major challenges that you just ran into? Like, you know, the baseball that hits you in the side of the head.
Sure,
You're like, where the hell did that come from? Can you talk about some of those challenges and maybe how you dealt with them?
Yeah, I would say one of the things was our team wasn't necessarily equipped to deal with the veracity of people who would want to get an edge in the game in multiplayer, you know, hacking, finding exploits. I mean, we're constantly dealing with DDoS attacks on our servers because currently there's a way to dupe with it. So it's forced us to really think a lot about our game as a service and how we secure it. So we have some things tied in with our launch that are going to make it a lot more challenging to do bad things to the service. But in response to that, we've had to hire like a whole customer service team. And a lot of what they deal with is griefing between players, stuff that is sort of like outside of the scope of the gameplay. It's just because it's multiplayer and people are kind of going at it. Of course, there's a fair amount of bugs, like I lost my dino, I got stuck here, I uploaded my character and now it's gone. So our customer service team spends a lot of time sort of validating those claims and kind of giving people their stuff back if we feel it's a legitimate bug in the game. But some of that stuff is really, we didn't anticipate initially. And so for us over the course of development, going to that more like treating the game as a service model is still something we're working on. We're not the best at it. It wasn't something we were equipped for initially, and we're trying to get better at it, especially towards launch, both through responding to the community's concerns and making the game better. And it's just one of those things you realize as you develop and players are playing the game in ways you don't expect, trying to exploit things, trying to do this, that, or the other, that, you just can't plan for at the beginning. You don't know that people are going to get in there and figure out a way to crash your server so they can do something nefarious. Maybe, somebody knows that because they've done this 1,000 times, right. But we didn't know that it would be such a huge problem. That's why we started giving, bounties for bugs and stuff early on. It's encouraging people to tell us about exploits so that they wouldn't impact the larger community and we could reward them with some payments and stuff like that if they help us plug them. Things like antivirus companies and Microsoft and stuff do, and probably larger game companies and stuff like that. So, that's just one example, but there's so many things of having a live game that you're in development with. There's so many unexpected things that come up, and you just have to deal with day by day, So
yeah, it's amazing the business. Since the 70s, what are we in here? 40 years of gaming, and yet it's evolving all the time. And someone puts out a game like this in 10 years, they're going to deal with a completely new set of challenges, that are going to catch people flat-footed, and they're going to be like, "What? I never saw that coming." It's just fascinating to me. I'm still very fascinated by the business that we're in.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting a little technical for a second, you went to a middleware, you went to Unreal 4.
Yep.
How do you feel about that now, looking back? With in hindsight, you happy with that decision? Is that the way to go?
Yeah, I've been, in the past, I've been part of projects where we've written our own engine, and it is a huge time sink, and there's some advantages to doing it. But for us, that engine technology wasn't the differentiating factor. We felt that making good use of an engine was really more the strength of our team. We have very experienced Unreal developers on our team, C++ developers, that at the start of our project had never worked with UE4 because it was very new, but had done a lot of work with UE3, very low-level work. Some of these guys did the first ports to PSP and Android mobile devices for Epic and stuff like that. So, very experienced group. And for us, it was important because we needed C++ development. We couldn't sit there and write in a scripting language, even C# or anything like that, which is kind of Unity wants you to do that a little bit. So for us, we really rewrote a lot of our networking system almost entirely with C++ and other middleware third-party providers that even Unreal Engine uses, like PhysX. We get the source code from NVIDIA and get in there and rewrite some stuff when it's conflicting with our servers. So I would say it's a huge win because Unreal's sort of pseudo-open source at this point, where even the Microsofts and the NVIDIAs of the world will use it to say, hey, here's our, GameWorks suite, and it's pre-implemented in Unreal, and that's an advantage for smaller teams like ours because even though our engine is vastly different, we started with Unreal 4.5 and it's sort of cherry-picked improvements over the years. It gives us a common starting point when we want to integrate new technologies. And like I said at the beginning, like dealing with your core competencies, it really helps us focus on the game design and the gameplay and the problems with our specific game rather than trying to kind of wrestle with technology a lot of times. And so that's been a big help for us. And of course you get decent support, everybody's very busy with stuff, but there's been many times with Epic where it's like, hey, we've got a problem and they'll help us, And for a small team, I think it's important to use those lifelines because if you don't, then you're going to just be stuck spinning your wheels.
So how many platforms are you on?
We're on PlayStation 4, Xbox, and all iterations of both platforms there, so PS4 Pro and Xbox One X as well. And then PC, Mac, and Linux. And we've got a couple things planned for the future as well in terms of platforms for ARK. And, that's another good thing about the middleware. You don't have to go, it's like, well, there's some amount of support for these different platforms, so you just kind of got to get your stuff working. I'm oversimplifying, but at least there's a framework there for it that it actually does function. So.
I'm impressed to hear Linux.
And UWP, probably much to Tim Sweeney's chagrin, but ARK is also coming out on the Universal Windows platform, which is Xbox as well. We would never have done that if it wasn't supported in the engine because there's not like a huge player base there yet. But it does give Xbox players, they buy it once and they can play it also on Windows through UWP. They can multiplay through it or play on Xbox One X. So it was a value add we could give to our customers, and because the framework was already there for it, it didn't require a whole lot of extra work from us. So those things are nice for the community.
Just a fun thing. I personally love the name because it's just such a mouthful.
ARK Survival Evolved.
Well, yeah, like when you hear that, you're just like, could you talk a little bit about that? Like, how you had the balls to come up with this big, long name. And, everybody always wants you to come up with a small, trite little pun, a little punny name. And you kind of, but.
So I feel like we got to have our cake and eat it too with that one because we wanted a name that was short and easy, and we knew we wanted to call it ARK, but we were worried that nobody would know what the game was just from that name. And, of course, I knew a lot of people know the story of, Halo, and nobody would know what Halo was when it was being developed as IP, so they added, Combat Evolved onto it to kind of make it was an action game and all this stuff. Right. So we kind of just jokingly said, well, what if we called it Survival Evolved, kind of like as a nod to the whole Halo thing, and see if anyone gets mad at us. It was after we sort of initially said that, it really kind of stuck as an idea because we felt like we were evolving the survival genre. One thing that hasn't been released to the public yet and won't be until the game's available on the 29th is our sort of story end game content. It's actually quite a big update. There's like a final boss. There's kind of tying a bunch of loose ends through all the explorerness that are throughout the game. And we really feel like we took, what people had as a conception of the survival genre and added in these story elements, really tried to make it a way where people could optionally opt into exploring the lore and the backstory of the game. And we've tried to extend that through our expansions, like Scorched Earth and future expansions. And so the name kind of stuck, initially just sort of in jest, but then it was like, actually, this really describes what the game is for us. It's the evolution of the survival genre, and it just stuck. And now we get to use it because, when we have an expansion like Scorched Earth, it's like ARK Scorched Earth.
Nice.
So people now know what ARK is, finally. I mean, probably scientists are annoyed that our dinosaurs show up in Google as science fact, in which they do a lot of things that are not science. So at least people now kind of know what ARK is, and then whatever comes after it is more descriptive of what they're getting into in that matter. So
that's cool. And it's I love to hear that sort of the logic and the thinking behind how you arrived at it, and then it evolves. It's like anything, right? Building that brand, in a world today. I mean, imagine the challenge that folks will have in a creative industry 1,000 years from now, even trying to find words that haven't been... Everything
will be copyrighted. Yeah, and you'll get instantly sued for any letter you use.
I mean, the fact that Apple can have Apple You know what I mean? It's just like, come on, really? I mean, it's like everything will be taken. It'd be like showing up at the party, all the beer's been drank.
Exactly.
You know, in the year 3017.
Yeah.
It sucks for them. I hope if they're watching this on a old archive of Earth 2017, sorry guys, you got here late. I know that's ridiculous. I'm kind of temporal in that sense. Maybe it's I don't know my upbringing, but how when you start off and you're kind of working together with the guys or the team, and that's your whole focus and everything else. Then when you get successful, there's like a lot going on. Yeah. How have you managed the success to keep you focused every day on going in, working with the team, and getting stuff done? Because at the end of the day, right? You cannot. That stops. The air goes out of the balloon. We know that, right? So how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I think in our case, ever since the beginning, we knew we were shipping kind of an exact game that people thought we were going to take their money and run. Because there was this game called the Stomping Lands, which basically that happened, where they created a dinosaur survival game, did a bunch of cool work on it, made a couple million, $3-4 million bucks, and then we're not going to develop this game anymore and split. So we knew right from the beginning that we would be dealing with that from the community. And we've always felt that we have to prove that that's not the case here. Like, no matter how successful the game is, no matter how much money the game makes, it's not a make money and run type of thing. We're always here. We're always working just as hard. If anything, it makes us want to work harder because now we've got the security knowing that, hey, this isn't kind of like a temporal moment in time where we made some money and now it's all trailed off. The game, mind-bogglingly, is still making money all the time. And it's like, well, we have to give people more of what they love. We've got to ship. We've got to get the performance where people want it. We've got to get the bugs squashed. We've got to give them more ARK after ship with more updates and more paid content, with the giant expansions we do. And so I think it really drives us to do that more so than it drives us to go like buy an island and like chill out and be like, all right, we're retired now. Like none of us are like that. Like, we want to bring more people into the team. We want to bring more of that. Like, I'm going to work on what I'm good at. Let's hire some people to give a better, experience to either the users or create people that are have more expertise to improve the quality of the game, like animations or something like that. And it lets us like be at ease a little bit and not feel like every minute, running your own company, you're like, do we have enough money for this month? Do we not have enough money this month? Like, just get to forget about all that. Do what you love, which is what we all want to do. And not stress so much, which is the best part about it. And I think going forward, we have plans for our next product and stuff like that we'll plan to do after ARK. And, we're already excited about that. The team, once we ship ARK and the next expansion and stuff like that, we'll start transitioning to the new product. And that's where we're putting all of our success is like, let's try to do something new that we think people want, and we feel very fortunate to be able to do that, so.
Well, I love that part of this story because, how do I say this? Like I'm a little crushed inside. My spirit is crushed when people make money in the games industry and then run away with the cash. It's like you weren't here because you love gaming. Where's the love of the art, right? And you and talking to you and knowing you over these last 5 years, I mean, clearly you love the art and science of making games.
Totally.
And it comes through in everything you do. It's a true pleasure to be able to be up here with you, to interview you, and to talk to you about this. You're one of the good guys. I think it's fair to say. You're not the guy who just peels out of the parking lot with his Ferrari and gives you the middle finger and says thanks. You're a real genuinely awesome person. So it's just really terrific to see someone like you and your team succeed this way. So I think it's really amazing. So on that note, if anyone has any questions that they want to throw out, I kind of hogged up a bunch of the time.
So the question was, we passed Cert Gold Master on PS4 and Xbox. Is that ARK the first game to sell 10 million copies and do that? I don't think so. I think, Minecraft had sold a lot of copies before they actually went to a disc version. But I will say that it's rare. We've had a lot of confusion with the retailers on how to handle our product. They worry that we've sold the game to all the people who want to buy it. But our experience through doing pre-orders, we announced a collector's edition that's got really cool, like, physical book of all the dinosaurs. That's almost sold out now. Pre-orders are very strong. It's clear that while retail is, in the industry is kind of trending downwards in terms of the proportion of revenue to digital sales, and, candidly, arguably, we as developers don't make any more money, sometimes less per unit at retail, even with $60 versus $30 digitally. There's still a lot of people that want to buy games at retail, and that's why we're doing it on ARK. And in a lot of regions worldwide, we're shipping in like 100 regions. There's some regions where people just can't download 30 gigabytes, and so that's, I think, the people we're reaching. And finally, the retailers have realized through working with us that this is a huge advantage, that there's already some people that know about the game. It's probably a little bit less marketing required to get the word out, but also everybody loves dinosaurs, so, it's like even just being on the store shelves, I think, is going to give a whole new exposure to people who might not be on their Xboxes or PlayStations or on Steam digitally looking for games, So the question is shipping the game at retail more kind of like a finality, like we're done with it now, so we're going to ship it at retail? Do we expect it to kind of take off or just kind of peter out? Every game kind of has this sort of curve over time if it's not like maintained where, people play it less and less. We don't want that to happen with ARK. We've had kind of a constant slow uptake of users. And so actually our plan is to continue to develop the game. We're planning to put out content updates at least every few months, after launch, as well as additional bug fixes and maybe balance adjustments for the community. We have spent a massive amount of time in the past few months squashing bugs, improving performance, doing all the things you would do on any game before you release. And now, in between Gold Master and our launch, we're also preparing a day one patch and focusing on the PC version to do even more of that. So we expect it, and we hope that the interest in ARK will continue to grow from retail. We'll be announcing a new expansion pack shortly after retail at some point as well, along the lines of Scorched Earth. It's been about a year since people have had a grand new expansion, and so we're going to be treating the game as if it's continuing to grow. Retail is a new launch for us. We've got all new servers that are segregated from the old early access servers. So we're giving those people their servers that they've been playing on for 2 years, but we're creating new locked servers that you can't transfer characters to for all the new people that are coming in. So for us, it's not we're finished now. It's more of a new launch, and we're actually very excited about it.
Awesome. Well, on that note, looks like we're at the end.
All right, give it up for Jesse Rapczak. Thank you
Cool,
very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris.
And I'm sure we'll be around here if anybody wants to chat about anything else.